Okay, so I'm going to continue where we left off. So we basically gave the underlying concept of libun and hagala and how they work. Hagala has two conditions associated with it. It couldn't have been used for 24 hours, and it has to be clean, while libun, burning it, does not have any of these two conditions. You can simply burn it out whenever it's ready. Okay, one more, I guess, there's a few introductions to understand the laws of koshering. The next very important aspect of koshering is the materials. Okay, different materials have different rules as to how they can be koshered. Okay, so I'm about to talk about, I'll give a minute for. Okay, so not all materials can be koshered. Okay, the Talmud discusses three types of materials. Okay, the first type of material is called cheres. Okay, cheres refers to earthenware, porcelain, china. These types of materials, the Talmud tells us that cheres cannot be koshered. It's impossible to get taste out of cheres. In other words, cheres absorbs and it lets taste out as well into what you're cooking in it, for example. But you can never completely purge cheres because it's so porous. You can never totally properly purge cheres, earthenware, from the taste that's within it. And therefore you can't kosher it, literally. So if a person messes up a china, for example, a china plate, there's technically, practically no way to kosher it. Are there leniencies and great exceptions in great need? Yes, but on a practical, basic level, the answer is no, cheres cannot be koshered. Okay, that's category number one. So this is china, these are all these different types of materials. Sometimes you have the sink. The inside of the sink is, the white sinks, the kitchen sink, that can be porcelain, right? That's the type of cheres. You can't kosher that, okay? So that's an example of where this is relevant. The second material is metal. Metal, for sure, could be koshered. Metal is the one that the Torah actually discusses outright. These different types of metal that could be koshered, absolutely. You can do libun, you can do hagala. Metal is for sure could be koshered. The third type of material is glass. Now, glass, the Talmud does discuss, and it comes all the way down to the Shulchan Aruch, where you have a major discrepancy as to the status of glass. The Sephardic opinion, the Shulchan Aruch's opinion, therefore the Sephardic tradition is that glass, not only could it be koshered, you don't need to kosher it. Glass, because it's so smooth and it's so strong, it never absorbs taste in the first place. Glass is such an amazing material, it doesn't absorb. By the way, ever since I had my issue with my coffee cup, right? I had a porcelain white coffee cup. Now I use glass. Glass, I never had this issue again, because taste does not really get absorbed into glass. I guess that's a practical way to show it, to prove it. Glass doesn't absorb taste. So according to Sephardic tradition, glass doesn't absorb taste. You never need to kosher glass. You can simply wash it out and use it for the other thing. So for example, milk to meat, you can just wash it off and make sure it's clean, use it for the other thing. And again, according to Sephardic tradition, this goes for Pesach as well. Glass is totally fine. You can just wash it off and use it, okay? Wonderful. What is the Ashkenazic tradition on glass? A little bit different. Glass has a status of cheres, of earthenware. Earthenware, we said, was the most severest one. It's the one that it absorbs and it's impossible to kosher, right? One of the reasons mentioned in the Gemara why we would say such a thing is because glass apparently is made from sand. Okay, I don't know exactly how glass is made, but somehow it comes from sand, which is the same way earthenware is made. So therefore it gets a status of cheres and it cannot be koshered. So it's two extremes here. According to the Sephardic tradition, not only could it be, you don't need to kosher it, you just wash it off. It never needs to be koshered. According to Ashkenazi tradition, it cannot be koshered, and it's like cheres. If it gets a taste of a different type, you have to throw it out. What's the halacha? So again, it seems like if you're Ashkenazi, you have to go with the stringent opinion here, and you can't use it from one to the other. I know many Ashkenazim are lenient during the year, but are stringent on Pesach. I think all opinions say glass, you have to be stringent on Pesach at least, right? Again, Ashkenazic opinions. That you have to be stringent on Pesach, and therefore glass is a problem. Glass cannot be koshered. We have to treat it like cheres, we treat it like earthenware. It cannot be koshered, and this can create some serious dilemmas when it comes to glass. Okay, so we got cheres, earthenware, we have metal, which could be koshered. Cheres, earthenware cannot be koshered. And now glass is subject to discussion if you're Ashkenazi or Sephardi. I'm going to keep the halachos for Ashkenazi. I think most of our listeners are Ashkenaz. So we're going to go with that. It cannot be koshered. We treat it like earthenware, cannot be koshered. That goes with Duralex, all these different materials. I'm sorry? Okay. So no way to kosher it. Okay. Moving along. What about plastic? What about plastic? Now, plastic is something they did not have in the time of the Talmud. It's a new material that we've had, relatively recently. It's made from basically chemicals. right? How do we view this? Which category does it fit into? Rav Moshe Feinstein was stringent on plastic, and that was as far as I know, many people are stringent on plastic for many years because Rav Moshe said, look, I don't know about plastic. All I know is that the Torah tells us what could be koshered. Everything else, I'm concerned, cannot be koshered, and therefore we have to be strict on plastic. That was his approach. But if you look in the later authorities, many authorities were lenient on plastic. And the list, there's a big list of them, the Minchas Yitzchak and others who were lenient on plastic. And the OU recently put out that they adapted the opinion of the lenient opinions in a case of great need. So in other words, plastic is going to end up being a scenario as follows. If you need it, you can kosher it, even for Pesach, okay? If you need it. If you don't need it, so of course, there's room to be stringent here. Again, you're always going to have this thing, room to be stringent, but if you need it, there's room to be lenient as well, okay? So now we broke down the materials and we'll kind of plug and play into all the different things in the house. Let's go back. Let's start with the counters and we'll go on in the kitchen and go throughout the kitchen, see what we could kosher and what we can't. The counters. Counters are made out of what? They're either made out of stone. I didn't talk about stone. Stone could be koshered, right? Wood can be koshered, okay? Or they can be made out of formica. The formica, if you have those wooden ones covered in that formica, that's a type of, I don't know if that's a plastic. What is that, right? I don't know if it's plastic or wood or what it's made of. One thing is for sure, the koshering methods we're going to discuss, you're not going to be able to do it on a wooden countertop. So the wooden countertop is out. If you had to pour hot water, we'll discuss how you pour hot water and you're going to destroy it anyway. So you're not going to be able to kosher a wooden countertop, practically speaking. Even if you had a pure like butcher block, which you think could handle the heat, they're very hard to clean. We said before that if you can't clean it, you can't kosher it. You can't do hagala, right? You can't kosher it. So the wood's not going to be an option there as well. The only countertops you can really kosher are either metal ones like they have in commercial kitchens or a pure stone slab, right? A proper stone, granite, quartz, whatever it is that you can kosher. Why do I say pure stone? Because a lot of the stone-like countertops are not actually a pure stone. What they are is they're a bunch of pieces of stone that were glued together with some kind of glue. Now you have to know if that glue is kosherable. That I don't know. Right? So very often you wind up in a scenario where your stone is not real stone, it's something else, right? It's some kind of composite, it's something else, and we don't know if we can kosher it. So once again, if you do have that scenario, you simply cover it. Now, let's say you have a stone countertop. Let's go, you have a proper granite countertop. What do? So the halacha that we said before, kibolo kach polto, the same way the taste goes in is the way you get the taste to go out. Since the taste, how does taste go? You don't cook on a countertop. Right? We're not hibachi kitchens, right? What happens? You spill on a countertop. That's how the chametz gets there in the first place. So all you have to do to kosher it is spill hot water onto the countertop. There you go. That's how you do it. So you take a what they call in Hebrew a kumkum. You take the hot water pot or any pot that's boiling water. It's got to be boiling water. As soon as it's boiling, you take it and you pour it. It should get every single spot with direct contact, direct flow from the water pot. So direct contact hits every spot of the counter. If you do that, you don't have to do it at once, right? It takes a long time to get every single spot. It has to get direct contact. When I say direct contact, I mean you can't pour it and let it spread. That's not called direct contact. That's already something else. That's cliche. You need it to hit direct. So you need direct contact in every single spot. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of water, and it might make a big mess. Okay, but technically, and it may be dangerous. By the way, I'd love to say don't try this at home, right? Where else are you going to try this, right? This is what you do at home. If you want to kosher a countertop, you have a pure slab of stone, you could do this. Just realize it may make a mess. It may damage things. There's going to be a lot of hot water flying in all directions. You got to hit every single spot of the counter, and that's how you kosher a counter. You can do this for Pesach, and it's 100% kosher if you did it right. What about the sinks? The sink's exactly the same. You don't cook in a sink. It's the same thing. Things spill it. You have a hot pot of pasta, you spill out the water into the sink. The sink gets spilled on. The way to kosher is by spilling on it. You once again heat up the hot water pot and you spray. Now, again, the material of this thing is very important. We said before, if you have a porcelain sink or a plastic sink, you cannot, porcelain, let's go start with one at a time. Porcelain, you cannot kosher, period. There's no way to kosher it. If it's metal, you certainly could kosher it. If it's plastic, machlokas, if you have a need, you can kosher it. That's the OU's policy. So those are your different things. Now, before you try to kosher, let's go the steps of a sink. You have to make sure it's clean, we said before. If it's not clean, you can't do it. Now, there's clean and there's clean for koshering. Clean for koshering means you checked every crack and crevice in that sink. You checked where the where the sink meets that drain thing in the middle, and you check that out. By the way, that drain thing, might as well just replace it. You can get a new one. They're like $1 or $2 or whatever it is. Just get a different one for Pesach. Don't even bother trying to kosher that thing. You can't clean it. Cleaning means you have to get into every single hole of that drain thing and make sure it's clean. But at least in the cracks there where it meets the drain, or another place, if the sink comes from under the counter, there's usually a crack, right, where the sink meets the counter, right? You have the kind that comes over or the kind that comes from under. If it comes from under, there's that crack between the counter and the sink. Very hard to clean that area. So if you want to kosher, some people actually will buy this special kind of tape, aluminum foil tape, and they'll tape over that entire crack, because to get in there and clean it is almost impossible. Okay, again, when we talk about cleaning for kosher, we're talking about a different status, a different level of clean. It's got to have literally nothing in it. Okay, so here you want to clean it out completely, and then you want to kosher. Now, koshering here, once again, is pouring the water and splashing from direct contact from the hot water pot on every single part of the sink. That's the only way to kosher it. If you just simply pour it and let it go down the walls, that's not koshering. That will not count, doesn't work. You have to get every single pot. It's going to take a few times filling up that kumkum just to get the sink totally done. If you don't want to kosher the sink, what's your other solution? Is simply you get an insert, or you have a porcelain sink, you'll need to do this. You get an insert, you get like a plastic insert. It's a big box with a hole in the bottom, and that becomes your sink for Pesach. And that's, again, the same thing as covering. So covering is a great solution if you don't want to deal with koshering, or you can't deal with koshering. Makes sense? So on the countertop, it's covering the countertop. If you don't want to deal with it, just cover it with something like foil or something else, laminate, whatever you find, cover it. And the sink, same thing, put an insert, and you avoid the issue. Okay. They also say if you're going to kosher the faucets as well, because the whole year there's steam. Remember we talked about steam before. The steam is going up and hitting the faucet. So now you want to make sure when you put Pesach food in there, the steam is going to go up and meet that same faucet. Now the question was asked before about the under the counters. Can I simply wipe it with the spray? The answer is, can I do that with the sink too? The answer is no, because the spray, right, the cleaning it with the ammonia spray, all that does is that makes any chametz that's be'en, any actual chametz, it makes it not chametz. But the taste that got absorbed into the counter or into the cabinets or into the faucet, that doesn't take care of. The only way to get rid of that is by koshering it. So what you would do is, that's why I mentioned before with the under the counters, right, under the cabinet, right, the steam that's going up, it wouldn't be sufficient to simply spray. You'll actually have to cover that area. And the same thing with the faucet. If the faucet, it's not enough to wipe it clean with a spray, what you'll have to do is actually a kosher. You can pour hot water on it, or maybe there's a steam way to kosher, I don't know, but the most practical is pour the hot water on top of it. The same way you did in the sink, you do it with the faucet as well. Actually, they say a piece of advice is to run the hot water at the same time. So if you're running the hot water, so you have hot water from the inside, hot water from the outside, this is the advice given by Eider and others. So we'll go with it. Okay. So this is the way you kosher surfaces that do not actually cook. They simply, things spill on them. If things spill on them, the way to kosher is by spilling on them. Okay. So that's the counter and the sink. It could be a table as well. If you have like a stone table and you bring pots to the table and things like that, that would be the best way to kosher it as well. You can pour hot water on it and thereby take care of the problem. Okay, let's move on to the more, I guess, assuming that was all clear, let's move on to the more challenging areas, the more, it's just getting more and more difficult. Let's go into let's talk about the oven. Okay, and again, slow me down if you need me to. The oven, we'll talk about first the inside of the oven. So the inside of the oven, we mentioned already, if you have a self-clean oven, you do libun, and that fills every obligation possible. Okay, every obligation. Libun, self-clean is the best. If you don't have self-clean, what can you do? Okay, so what's the problem here? The problem is that all year I'm baking bread and cake, and is it steam? What is it? It could be steam is coming out, especially if you're cooking things with a liquid in it. There's steam that's going all over the walls. That's going to now come in contact with your food. It could be there's splattering on it. Okay, if you don't have a self-clean, if you have self-clean oven, just run the self-clean, done. If you don't have a self-clean oven, you're going to have to rely on something else. We'll call it libun kal for these purposes. Basically, what you do is you clean out the oven completely. You wait 24 hours. You put it on the highest setting that the oven can go on for a little bit of time. How much time? Rav Aaron Kotler wrote an hour. Many people say it doesn't really need an hour, maybe a half hour, something like that, half hour to an hour. Pick your time that you like. Leave it on again, full blast, as hot as it goes. Again, it was clean. It wasn't used for 24 hours. And you've accomplished something that's not libun because it didn't get to 800 degrees. It got only to 500 degrees, right? Whatever the oven gets to. But this may be called a libun kal, and you can rely on this again, because there's no actual chametz there. You're just getting rid of the taste that was absorbed from the steam and the different types of things that you baked in there. Okay, so this is a reliable way to kosher. There are those, I'd say right now in Israel, I know it's very hard to come across a self-clean oven unless you're buying an American oven, right? The European ovens are not self-clean. There are many people who are not so sure about this method of koshering. It's not quite libun. What is it? Maybe it's not sufficient for Pesach. It's sufficient for during the year, but it may not be for Pesach, according to some opinions. And therefore, they will actually go out and buy these large toaster ovens. Okay, imagine a toaster oven, just a big one, and they will bake in that just for Pesach. It'll be a Pesach oven, and that's it. This is also a solution. Okay, I just want to point it out. It is the solution. You can do this. I don't know how expensive they are here, but I'm sure they're, this might be a reasonable solution for some people who don't want to have to deal with koshering in this way. This way of koshering is less good. Okay, the ideal way to kosher an oven is libun. If you don't have self-clean, that means getting it with a blowtorch. You're not going to do that. So this way, according to many opinions, is sufficient. But like I said, there are those who are stringent on it. Okay, that's the inside of the oven. There are those who say, here's another point about the oven. Again, this should be good enough. We should be done. However, there are those who say that the oven door doesn't get quite as hot as the rest of the oven. Okay, that's one of the issues with the oven door. The oven door is not quite as hot as the rest. It doesn't get to the same temperature as the rest of the oven, A. And B, guess what's on the oven door? Glass. And we said before that glass is problematic to kosher. So there are people who have a stringency, and again, this is a very viable stringency, especially understanding that glass is problematic, that they will actually cover the oven door. So how do you do this? You take a big piece of foil, you wrap it around the oven door from the inside to the outside. On the outside, you tape it onto the door, and you leave that there for the duration of Pesach. Okay, this is a viable, reasonable stringency. It's a stringency. There are definitely those who are lenient without doing this. I just want to point it out because this has some validity. We're talking about glass. We just said before, Ashkenazim do not kosher glass. What happened over here? All of a sudden, we're being lenient. So the answer is yes. Some people are not lenient. They cover this. Okay, so that's where it comes from. All right, moving on to the stovetop. Now, gas stovetops are easier to kosher, but as far as I know, I don't know anyone who has gas. Does anyone have gas in Arizona? I know in Florida, Arizona, I haven't seen gas anywhere. I've seen only electric. So we'll focus on electric. What do you do to kosher a stovetop, an electric stovetop? So really you could do libun here. If you turn on the electric element, the electric burner, what happens is the electric stovetop is going to turn red hot. That's a libun gummer. Especially if you have the coil one, you see it on the coil, the whole thing turns red. That's koshering. That's koshering. So you thereby kosher, you put it on the highest, okay, put on the highest heat, put it on, it doesn't take very long, maybe 5-10 minutes. It doesn't take very long. Once it's red hot, it's kosher and it's fine. Okay, so that's the simplest. So we'll talk about the coil stovetop first. That one is kosher very simply. You put it on high, done. Where's the problem? The problem is the areas in between the burners. Why is that? Those areas, first of all, they get spilled on a whole year long, right? You put down pots on there, right? It's a whole year long, there's chametz on there. You can't, the heat will not get there just by turning on the burner. The burner would turn the burners. The coils get red hot, not the middle. And the worst part is that middle is often made out of an enamel. That enamel is treated by many as a cheres, as an earthenware, which cannot be koshered. So now what do? Right? So typically what's done with the middle between the burners is you cover that area with foil. And this is why you'll see a lot of foil in the kosher kitchen, right? They'll cover between and around all the burners because all that is not kosher. By the way, it's worthwhile to point out that if you use the same stovetop for milchik and fleshik for meat and dairy, there's a good chance that that middle area is not kosher altogether. Just be aware. What does that mean? That means during the year, you cook meat on one burner and milk on another, or maybe the same burner, whatever you do. I'm not here to discuss that, but there's stuff that gets sprayed a whole year on the middle, both from the meat and from the dairy. So that means that middle absorbed both meat and dairy. And there's no way to kosher it because it's enamel. You can't possibly kosher it. So it's actually not kosher, which means that if you're cooking, I don't know, potatoes, and a potato falls out and winds up in the middle, you want to take it and throw it back in, you can't do that. Right? If it falls out, you got to throw it out. I'm just trying to point out how this is actually practical and relevant all year long to realize that middle area is really something that if you have milk and meat going on your burners, that's probably a non-kosher surface right there. Anyway, for Pesach, at least cover it with foil and you're good to go. Okay. Another area you'll want to consider covering is the back of the stove. So you have the stove, right, where the burners are, and then you have that back, right? Sometimes it's like that has a console on there, it has a time on there, right? Different ovens are different. This can apply to the wall, whatever it is. If your pots, when you put on the back burners, they're touching the back console thing, that thing that juts upward on the back of the stove, you got to cover that as well. You don't want to have your Pesach pots in contact with the same surface that your chametz pots are in contact with the whole year. Okay, just realize when you do cover with foil all these different areas, you leave the vents uncovered because the vents are needed in order for steam and heat to come out, and that's the only way it can work. So you want to leave those vents opened. Okay, so that's the stovetop. What about the glass stovetop? I spoke about the coil stovetop. What about the glass stove? This is a major controversy in halacha. What do we do with glass? We said before, glass cannot be kashered, period. If you're Ashkenazi, it's over. If you're Sephardic, no problem. If you're Ashkenazi, you can't kasher the glass stovetop. Here you want to kasher your stovetop, but you use it all year. You want to use it for Pesach. According to many opinions, there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. You cannot kasher this. Okay. Is that the halacha? Here's one of those places you can look at every OU, CRC, OK, Star K, and you'll find a different opinion in each place. There are those who are lenient to kasher the glass in this scenario, and this only in this scenario. They say this is the one exception to the rule. This is the only glass you can kasher. Okay, so that's what they say. If you want to be stringent and you have a glass stovetop, and you don't want to rely on the leniency because it's not so clear there's a good leniency here. If you want to be stringent, this would be a scenario where you buy separate burners, plug-in burners, and use that all Pesach. You can buy separate electric burners; they're not that expensive. I don't know, the single ones are what, $20 in Walmart? You can get a double one, you can get 2 of them, you have 4 burners, you can cook on them, and they work. Now, let's say you want to rely on the lenient opinion. The lenient opinion will say that, yes, you can kasher it. You see it gets bright red, that's clear. The glass seems to be getting kashered. Nonetheless, if you want to rely on that, no problem. Just realize it's only in that circle that gets red, and that's kashered. Once again, the middle, right, between the burners are not kashered, and they cannot be kashered. You would have to cover those areas again with some kind of foil or something else. Make sure you don't make a fire, and it could be, you can deal with it that way. I recently saw there's a product out there that you can actually put on top of an electric burner, on top of a glass burner. It's like this metal disc that you put down, and you can put your pot on top of that. And that would be the ideal. If you can do something like that and use that for Pesach, that would be an ideal. I don't know what it's called. I actually emailed somebody in the kashrus world to try to find out what this device is called and where to get it and how much it costs and all these different details, because I think it would save a lot of people from this situation of glass. All right, let's have the last item, I think, of the day. I know it's taking, we're going quite lengthy here. Talk about the microwave very quickly. What's with the microwave? Can you kasher a microwave for Pesach? So really, there's 2 issues with the microwave. A, very hard to clean. We said before, if you can't clean it, you can't kasher it. Okay, that's across the board. A microwave is very hard to clean. Why is that? Because you have, first of all, there's schmutz everywhere. Just take a look inside your microwave. You'd be amazed how much stuff splatters in a microwave. But also you have that fan area with the little holes, right? Very hard to clean. The holes in general, we say you can't get into every single hole and clean properly. So I don't know if it's possible to clean it well enough for kashering. Oh, you know what it is. Thank you, Ms. Becker. Thank you. A diffuser can be purchased at Sewer Lid Table in Kirtland. Thank you so much. So if you, yeah, maybe I'll take a look and see if we can get one, because that's going to, that's a wonderful, wonderful solution to the glass issue. Okay, thank you. Anyway, so with the microwave, very hard to clean. If you can't clean it properly, you can't kasher it, and that's it. Case closed. If you can clean it properly, you can get in there and you clean it. You get with a toothpick, you get in the holes, you get into every single one. You make sure it's absolutely positively clean. Okay, so then you have a second issue. Issue number 2 is that the inside of the microwave is typically plastic. Plastic, we said before, is a machlokes, right? Machlokes, can you kasher it or not? And we said that in case of great need, you can be, OU says you can be lenient if you have a great need. So if you need your microwave, you can't buy another one for Pesach. So yes, you can kasher it according to the OU because you have a need. Okay, so those are the 2 main issues. By the way, be aware if you're going to kasher a microwave that your plate on the bottom is glass. Glass, according to Ashkenazim, you cannot kasher. So you'd have to remove the plate. The plate has to go away. You're not going to get the turning sensation over Pesach. You'll simply have to put it down on the floor of the microwave. What else? And the door. Okay, I don't know what to do about the door. Some people will say, I heard some, I think he was in the kashrus world. He said he puts a cardboard piece into the door. So because he doesn't want to kasher the door. All right, I don't know how crazy you have to go with this. but let's just, at least the plate seems to be an issue. So remove the plate. Now, how do you kosher it? Because a microwave is not coming in direct contact with food, it's just getting steam from food. So the way to kosher in this case would be to create steam. So you take a large cup of water. You want to have something, a strong cup, a glass, something that's going to be able to deal with a lot of heat. You boil the cup in the microwave where the steam goes all over the place. And now you're using steam to kosher the same way the steam went in to make it chametz. Now, the only thing to realize is, here's a very interesting point, I heard this recently, is that the place where the cup is sitting didn't get steam. Everywhere else got steam, but the place under the cup didn't get steam. So what you need to do is you need to do this twice. You need to first boil the cup a first time, then move the cup over to a new spot, and then do it again. So you're koshering also the place where the cup was. Okay, so that's the way to kosher a microwave for those who have a need for a microwave. So hopefully we covered the primary areas of the kitchen that need to be koshered. We dealt with, again, wiping down the kitchen, which was the first issue. We dealt with koshering, getting the taste out. We dealt with the countertops, the sink, the ovens, the stovetop, the microwave. I believe we got it all. I'm sure everyone has questions about individual things that they have in their homes. If you have individual questions, we'll speak about them individual basis. All right, I wish everybody a Chag Kosher Sameach, and we'll be in touch with personal questions. Take care.